So I'd like to invite my fellow panelists to come onto the stage. So I'm not going to spend the first 5 minutes introducing each of our speakers. All of you have extensive biography on the seats that you can consult, but I'd like to welcome, first of all, just by name and organisation, Graham Holder from CFlex, Raphael Jomot from Petcore Europe, Willem Christians from Indorama, Anna Fernandez from from KP, Sergio Espinosa from Ube, and Aida Cieso from KP. I think it would be nice just to give a snapshot of the broad perspectives and missions of each of our speakers before we get into interactive discussion. And maybe it would be great to start with Aida. You have, as a Senior Sustainability Manager, quite a broad overview of the goals that KP is pursuing and the broader ESB agenda. Could you kind of link your view of the challenges to the discussion that we're going to be having today?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I'm not going to introduce much about KP because Ben just did it fantastically. But we launched our Investing in Better strategy in 2021. And since then, we've been reporting on a yearly basis our sustainability performance. And I think that probably all of you know, like that the sustainability space has been growing up quite a lot in the recent years. More and more, it's more required to report externally on the progress that you're making and, you know, how are you overcoming the challenges that you might be facing. Your investors as well, you know, might be asking quite a lot on how are you doing. And I think that on how the regulation is looking on all these things, you know, there's so many international frameworks that they explain you how you really need to report on sustainability, but there's not so much of an alignment. So, you know, everyone can more or less choose what's important for them, what do they want to report, and so on. So us, by choosing, like, for example, close the loop as one of the objectives that we have, we're really focusing on circular economy. We want to, you know, let our customers, suppliers, and investors know how are we performing on that. So we're reporting our sustainability report, as I said, on a yearly basis. And I'll just take the chance to say that we'll be publishing it now at the end of June. And then as well, we get quite a lot of requests from customers, from investors, you know, asking us about how are we doing in regards of sustainability. And that can be by like rating questionnaires like Sustainalytics, EcoVadis, S&P Global, or by simple questionnaires that, you know, the customers might send us. And I think that there's been quite a shift in the recent years that we do not get only asked about circular economy, but it's, you know, it has a bigger picture than that. So they are asking us a lot of questions about climate, human rights, you know, how are we treating our employees? So there's a bit of maybe not a gap, but, you know, it's difficult to keep accelerating probably circular economy on that end when companies, you know, they are not so much requested to report on all the KPIs. I think that probably the only framework that is out there that it requires you to report on circular economy would be the Ellen MacArthur Foundation New Plastics Economy, and you will only need to report on that if you're a signatory. Otherwise, then you will not be reporting on that. So there's definitely, you know, further needs to have, you know, frameworks or reporting guidelines into explaining how people, they need to report better on circular economy, being more transparent and having the same methodologies, right? So I think that that's quite key as well to keep driving progress.
Thank you, Aida. Let's go to Sergio. Could you give us a snapshot of your role and your mission and how it relates to the circular economy?
So yes, my name is Sergio and I work for Ube Corporation for the last already for 7 years, and I'm responsible for the technical support of polyamide. I know in the trays it's not the most common material. Normally we are more talking for we are part of the flexible packaging, but it's anyway still part of the whole supply chain we'll be talking about. And this is the responsibility that UBE also makes. As a resin producer, I mean, we're producing thousands of tons of virgin polyamide in the market, and this is a bucket that we're constantly filling. We're inputting material in the system. So the responsibility actually comes in trying to make it more circular. I mean, assuring two main goals. First, that wherever the polyamide is, it can be either recycled or somehow reused. And the second big step is related to that, but also offering some alternatives in the portfolio that are more circular, either because they come from bio origins, chemical recycling origins, but in the end, trying to make sure that the impact of our materials is not damaging the society. And this is a role that UBE takes in the packaging sector.
Thank you. So let's turn to Ana. Could you also introduce what your role is?
Ana Fernandez. I am the Innovation Director of the Food Packaging Division of Klöckner Pentaplast. I have been working in the packaging industry for many, many years, and in the last years I became an innovation director, and I am responsible for developing all the new products we have in the division, not just in trays but also in flexibles and in rigid. And our main objective is just to work around sustainability. It was very easy in the past to develop a new product, but now with the actual legislation constraints and all this policy around sustainability is becoming more and more difficult to give products to the final customers that complies with all the regulation and all the requests that are coming from these sustainability policies. And so far we are just working very hard to develop recyclable materials and also to incorporate recycled content. And tray-to-tray, as Ben has explained very well before, has been one of our most important projects in the last years because it's the project about closing the loop, is the project about circularity, and right now is one of our main projects in the company.
Thank you. And let's turn to Willem.
So thank you very much first to KP for inviting me as part of this panel. So my name is Willem Christiaans. I work for Indorama Ventures, which is a leading company worldwide in virgin PET, but as well in recycling of PET. So sustainability is very much at the core of our business. And PET is, of course, a plastic which is very, very recyclable if managed correctly throughout the value chain. And this is also why recycling is the core. So we would like to say that we would like to reimagine chemistry together, and we have to do that by implementing more and more recycling into the value chain. And this is part of my job within Indorama, as I am involved in business development and managing our feedstock for our currently 6 recycling facilities worldwide in Europe, where we recycle PET bottles and also, since 2021, PET trays for, indeed, also tray-to-tray recycling. And what I see as one of the challenges, which we will address probably later on, is that, as was shown in the presentation, tray recycled content was also coming from PET bottles. And we sense that because of targets, legislation, etc., there's becoming more and more a demand of recycling a product type A back into a product type A and a product B into B. So a bottle to a bottle and a tray to a tray. And this is where we see a huge opportunity. And this is one of the core projects that I'm also involved in within the company to incentivize and to promote, as well bottle recycling as well tray recycling. I think this is a huge opportunity.
Thank you. And Raphael.
So I am the technical manager at PETCO. PETCO is a value chain association for the PET industry. So it gathers a lot of companies involved in the production of recycled material, production of virgin material, converters like KP. And PETCO was born almost 30 years ago. Starting with design guidelines and came the idea to gather all the people to work on these design guidelines around the tables through that value chain association. And it was design guidelines for bottles at the time. And since 4 or 5 years now, we have developed also design guidelines and a platform to make assessment versus these design guidelines for thermoforms. It's a journey, it's a tough journey, and compared to bottles, what I would say is that, and I like very much what Ben presented earlier, is that for the bottles, when we started with the design guidelines, it was more like, okay, there were more, I would say, marketing issues around the design of the bottle. Here we have more like functional subjects to address there. And Ben pointed out that there was, we talk about sustainability. It's not only recyclability of the thermoform, but it also is the counterpart of how it impacts shelf life, for example, and things like that. So, and this is what we are dealing on day-to-day basis with the tray evaluation platform, is to see these innovations coming and see how it impacts. We will judge only versus recyclability, but also in some cases there are better options that are not perhaps totally perfect for recyclability, but better in the overall picture. So we need to take that. We look at also at that into the platform.
Thank you. And last but not least, Graham.
Well, thank you very much, KP, for the opportunity to present on a largely PET panel. I hadn't realized it was that dominant. I'm representing the flexible packaging sector's initiative to make all flexible packaging materials circular. That's what CFlex stands for, the Circular Economy for Flexible Packaging. And we started back in 2017, January 2017, trying to work out what circular economy actually meant. It slips off the tongue, especially the politicians' tongues. But if you ask people what circular actually means, it's not an easy concept. And if you ask 5 people, you'll probably get 10 answers. So the first challenge was to work out what circularity meant. And we started off by saying that you need to collect it. That's pretty obvious. You need to make sure that the majority of it, we set it at around about 80%, enters a final recycling process so that it can get back into the economy. And perhaps the third and most important part, which nobody still today really talks about, except very recently, is you need somebody to use that recycled materials. Now, for PET, which is has been alluded to, in quite a reasonably easy material to return back into the big applications, which are food contact. Polyolefins, different story. So CFlex has been focusing on that challenge initially, because the vast majority of flexible packaging are based around PE or PP or multi-material systems related to those two polymers. It's an initiative of just about 180 companies, some big ones, lots of very big ones, luckily, lots of small ones as well. And everything in between. So it's we've spent a lot of time, probably the first 3 to 4 years, working out what circularity means and how to do it. We're now, I'm pleased to say, very much on the implementation of the circular economy. We've been in this position for the last 2.5 years, and we are now starting to see real tangible evidence of companies taking the steps necessary, like KP, to use these recycled materials, to create the pull, to design their packs that they put onto the market so they can be recycled. So it's very, very encouraging. And I'd like to leave you with one thought before we get into the discussion about the legislation, because I'm sure we're going to touch on the legislation coming. It's being marketed by the politicians as a step towards circularity. Now, if you do the math behind collection, sorting, and recycling, and you say, we collect 90%, that is a very tall order to collect 90% of all the plastic packaging, all the packaging back from consumers, especially plastic packaging and especially flexible packaging. You then sort it, and you get a sorting yield of around about 80%, because there are going to be materials in there that you don't want in your bales. And then you recycle it, and let's say 75% is a pretty good yield for a mechanical recycling operation, given that you're starting off with somewhere between 10 and 20% of moisture in that. So you multiply those things together, and you get to 54%. Now, I'm sure there's people in the audience who know that the target for plastic packaging recycling in 2030 is 55%. So I would like to... The thought I'd like to leave you with is that actually the PPWR, Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, which is being proposed at the moment, is not law yet, thank goodness, is actually going from linear to circular in one step. And it's the people in the audience here today who are going to have to deliver that. So maybe a bit longer than normal, Tim, but I think that was a good introduction to set the tone for the discussion.
Thank you, Graham. And actually, I'd like to stay with you because I've had the privilege of having quite a close-up view of the progress of C-Flex since its inception. And I think it's no exaggeration to say that you've really kind of created the blueprint for a circular economy within flexibles. And perhaps it's interesting for us to consider that and think about, in this largely PET context, what we can learn about it, where are the contrasts that might be interesting. So could you perhaps just set out briefly on a high level, what is the requirements for a circular economy in each of the stages?
In this 4 to 6 year period that we've been doing this, we've realized that it's not that simple and it's not that easy. And so it's not like collect, sort, recycle, and reuse. There is a lot more needed in terms of the circular economy puzzle to make it work. So the model that we've got for flexible packaging, and I'd like to suggest it's probably the same for all the other materials out there, including non-plastics, to develop the circular economy, is that it's 5 steps that you have to take, and then there are 4 enablers. So the 5 steps are know what's going on to the market, because that's what's going to be coming back from the market. Flexible packaging, that's not an easy question. And even after 6 to 7 years, we're still fine-tuning that. We have a pretty good idea, but it's not, I wouldn't say it was more than 10, 20% accurate. Then who's going to use it? Who can use recycled polyolefin materials? Film to film, film to rigid, packaging applications, non-packaging applications. They aren't using it today, so can they use it in the future? So know your end markets, because they're going to have to take that that waste materials, and you're going to recycle it, and they're going to have to use it. So the third step is understand the recycling pathways that those end markets actually need to use that materials. They have to be the right quality and the right quantities. And with flexible packaging, we need this balance between mechanical and chemical recycling. There's hardly any chemical recycling out there today, but we're going to need a lot of it, because over 70%, probably over 80% of consumer flexible packaging is in food contact applications, and we can't do food contact for polyolefin materials at this point in time. So we need chemical recycling. If you know what your recycling pathways are and the different mix, you can set up your sorting facilities, your sorting capacities that you need to feed those facilities. And then you have to be able to get all the materials back from the market. So those are the 5 steps. So collection is key. But that's not enough. You need to underpin these with the 4 enablers, which are design, because how you design the material is going to determine what it costs to if you can get it back, and what it costs to put it through the recycling system. So design is very important. Design for recycling, we're calling it design for a circular economy, because design for recycling only goes so far. The next one is EPR, extended producer responsibility. If you don't have EPR systems, it is almost impossible to make flexible packaging materials sustainable economically. So the operators need EPR to fund certain parts of the system so that they can still make money. If they can't make money, it's not going to come back and it can't go circular. So EPR has a key role to play also between allocation of waste streams. How much goes to chemical recycling? How much goes to mechanical recycling? You don't want too much of one and not enough of the other, or vice versa, because you're either going to increase the cost or you're going to end up with too much material. So EPR controls all of these things. So for me, EPR is the kingpin that we actually have in this game, and we need to make sure that it's designed for circularity. The third enabler is legislation, and as I've already explained, packaging waste regulation, brilliant news for CFlex. Probably not such brilliant news for the people participating in CFlex, because there's a lot of challenges out there related to it, but it sets a level playing field for everybody to compete on. It's very difficult to go circular or sustainable if none of your competitors are doing it or need to do it for legal reasons. So legislation, absolutely essential. And the fourth, and probably the thing that CFlex brings most, is collaboration. Collaboration and communication, because we can't do this by ourselves. We need everybody to be following the same model, so ending up in the same destination, because if everybody's going in different directions, we're just going to lose money and we're not going to build scale. And this is all about building scale. So those are the 5 steps and the 4 enablers that are needed to make the economy circular. And I'm pleased to say we're making good progress on all of those steps, but you have to do them all at the same time. So, and we're reliant on a lot of the people participating in CFlex, like KP, to help us achieve that.
Thank you, Graham. Raphael, I'd like you to build on that very comprehensive overview that we had from Graham and apply it to the PET and the rigids space. Do you see any contrasts? Do you see it as more or less the same blueprint that we need to follow?
I mean, what I see here is just what happened to PET for years. So it started with the same journey, I would put first collaboration. The collaboration topic is really the key one. Exchanging the information, knowing what happens, to be able to reach the scale. Without that, nothing happens. I remember having an event 10 years ago, and in putting the people around the table of the bottle industry in France, and these people were just saying, I want this. Ask the guy who is next to you. He's just sitting there. Ask him. It was an EPR. It was a brand. So this is really key. And this journey is really is really a difficult thing when you don't start with this collaboration topic. The scale starts with collaboration, but also with the same mindset. If actually there's no scale, or there's hardly any scale, because there's not so many plants recycling thermoforms, but because there was an idea that it wasn't possible. And 30 years ago, it was the same for PET bottles. It wasn't possible to use a PET bottle back into a PET bottle for food contact. It wasn't possible. I had people coming to me and saying, never happens. I will not put anything in my brand new mineral water bottle. It happens. It needs innovation, but innovations means you don't have the scale. So it's chicken and egg, and at the end you need to have the people agreeing around the table that this is a construction. So the scale happens, it scales up a little bit, then innovation, and then it scales up, and then innovation. And it's just step-by-step approach, which takes anyway a lot of efforts and a lot of time, meaning a lot of investment, meaning that at the beginning you don't see how this makes economically sense, but it will anyway, because when you start to think, I need to reach circularity and not first step economical sense, then you think differently. Obviously, you need to have that economical sense. But if you start thinking the circularity, then you can build a proper system that works.
Thank you. So we've already set out two self-evidently very important aspects of this. One is the push of materials that are designed for a circular economy onto the market, and the other is the pull of demand for recycled materials back into the economy. Let's explore what the challenge is here, and perhaps the ways that we can get around them are. And first of all, thinking about the creation of circular plastics and circular PET. Anna, maybe we could begin with you. Where does KP stand here? What are the key challenges that you're having to face from an R&D point of view?
Okay. First of all, we need to remember to all the people in the room that we are producers of food packaging, and then for us, food is the most important thing. The first thing we need to be or to have in our minds when we develop something new is that we need something for food protection. Food has to be protected, and we cannot take any risk in order to use any material or any recycling that is not protecting the food or is bringing an additional risk to the actual technology. And then a tray, we are talking trays and thermoforms, but a tray is not just a tray. A tray normally needs a leading film, normally needs a pad, normally needs something printed, normally needs a label. And this makes the tray and the thermoforms very, very complex, because a bottle has been successfully recycled for years, but if you look at a bottle, it's a little bit more simple than a simple tray. A tray has a lot of components. And for us, the most important thing is to try to understand the role of every component and try to design something that can do the same functionality, to play the same role, but without hindering recyclability. At the same time, we need to have in mind that in most of the European countries, trays are mixed with bottles. Right now, bottles are recycled at scale, but trays are considered a kind of contaminant for bottles. Why? Because the viscosity of the trays are lower and contains all of these other things that are hindering the recyclability of the PET bottles. Then we need also always to think not just in a material that can be used for making new trays, but also a material that is not hindering the well-established bottle recycling scheme that is already working perfectly. Then it's for us quite important to start developing or designing for recycling, and for that we are just collaborating in several forums like PETCOR or especially in the TCEP, that is the Trade Circularity Platform in PETCOR, in order to understand what we need to remove from the actual trays to be circular, to be recyclable, without affecting the functionality of the final tray, and at the end protect the food. That is our mission. Okay. That means that we are, just as Ben has explained, we have been starting to replace multi-materials by monomaterials. Why? Because the multi-materials, when we are mixing polyolefins with polyesters, it's very difficult to separate them and recycle them back. Then the first thing is just to eliminate and try to become a monomaterial product. Second, we are trying to think in the leading film, what is the leading film that we need to use that seals and keep the sealing properties we are having now, but without hindering recyclability of trays. And then normally we think in polyolefins. Why? Because polyolefins has a lower density than PET, and when we recycle the tray together, we can separate them by flotation because the density is different. In that way, we are thinking in a leading that can be separated by flotation. But this leading has to be recycled. Then is why we are thinking in developing something that contains as less material as possible in the leading film, and is why we have developed films like the one Ben has presented that is fully recyclable and is not hindering the PET tray. And at the same time, we also need to have in how to eliminate pads. And we are working also with label producers in order to understand what is the label, the better label we need to use or recommend to our customers to use in our packaging, because in that way we will have a kind of full solution, fully recyclable, and in that way is the only way we can then go to circularity of trays into trays without hindering other recycling streams like the bottle one.
Thank you. I'll go to Sergio and then Willem. From your vantage points, respectively, is there anything else that you would add that is important in terms of the material specification for design for a circular economy?
It's true that the case for polyamide is not exactly the same as polyester. It's true that it's also normally used in multi-layer structures. But unlike the polyesters, there's a way, by nature, polyethylene and polyamide are polar and polar materials. In theory, they don't compatibilize. But thanks to the co-extrusion technology, the adhesive resins that are already in the structure have this kind of maleic anhydride, which is the molecule that actually bonds polyethylene and polyamide. So with the proper amount of these materials, via the mechanical recycling, it's actually possible to make the polyethylene and polyamide compatible. And this is not only theory. This is, following Graham's statement, is something that we already have studied a lot. First is collection of the packaging, sorting, and then recyclability. And we have followed these steps. We know the films containing polyamide are collected. We know they are sorted into the polyethylene recycling stream because it's the majority material. And we have several third-party certifications that certify that these films can be recycled into the polyethylene stream. And totally agree. The question is then what to do with that. Is the key point. And we're actually working on that. We are launching some business lines of products with recycled polyamide, actually 100% polyamide and also the polyethylene polyamide compounds. And yeah, it's something we're still working. Of course, food safety is the #1 issue. So something we're working on because so far we could only, let's say, these products we are only aiming for industrial packaging applications, or also some automotive. We have some ongoing projects, but looks definitely promising. And so design for recyclability is key. And besides that, we have several also ongoing projects of developing new materials, some nylon copolymers with lower melting points that also make easier this whole mechanical recycling process with the polyethylene.
If I could just add in there, I mean, that's the first step. I mean, the other steps are already in the pipeline, the holy grail, being able to sort out the polyamide containing and sending it to a dissolution recycling. So, I mean, we know how to do it. We've just got to do it. And, I mean, this is about the vision is all-encompassing. You can't just cherry-pick solutions because we have to make it all of these materials circular.
Yeah. I can just add to that. So, indeed, if you look at the packaging materials, so the actual package, and to circular aspects such as recycling, a few things. So first and foremost, it's about food safety and preserving food waste. So those are two things that are very important to the packaging industry, to the retailers, etc. We have to combine that indeed with creating a package which is as circular as possible and as wherever possible suitable for, at the moment, mechanical recycling processes, because these are in place. Specifically for PET, which has been, well, recycling has been on the market since the early 90s. So we have a lot of experience to actually recreate raw material which is able to fulfill those requirements on food safety and usability in new packagings. Having said so, we have some steps to take because we have more circularity targets for recycled content, a demand for packaging being recycled into the same type of packaging, which means that, well, we're here in thermoforming, we're talking about thermoforming, bottles are increasingly being used back into bottles. So what you would need is increased access to trays from post-consumer. And here lies, I think, one of the biggest challenges, because those streams are not as much developed yet, I have to say yet, as PET bottles, which have been recycled since the 1990s. So whilst it's technically possible, and we are proving that since 2021, after years of testing and developing together with partners, it's technically possible, and you can create a mono-material PET tray back into a mono PET tray again, according to all legislative and qualitative requirements. What you see is that because of the targets, probably the demand will increase faster than what the whole chain is developing. That's what the outlook now is. So we would need a faster development of collection rates, sorting, so that recyclers can recycle it back into a new raw material. And for that, we need to have, let's say, an infrastructure, which is not only technical, but also legislative, in place that would incentivize that. And that's, I think, where the main challenge is. And I think various players in the chain, all over the chain, from converters to brand owners to EPR schemes, are already working on that. But it is a very organic situation, and it will require continuous attention for us all to grow. And one of the aspects already mentioned by Graham, which is a new technology which can improve, for example, sorting and recycling. It's a Holy Grail project, which could determine a mono from a multi, for example. So it will, in my opinion, be a potential game changer.
Could be, if I can add that, yeah, that the Holy Grail could be a good improvement, because right now we have a challenge for using PET back, recycled PET back into new products for food contact. That is that we have to demonstrate that we have less than 5% of material coming from non-food applications. And Holy Grail will be a fantastic tool for tracing this type of things, because we can put a specific code in the tray, saying this tray has been used for packaging food. And then in that way, we can trace it and separate it, and we can, in that way, trace and be sure that all the material we are incorporating back in our products are coming from the food industry. And then there is a very, very little risk of getting any contaminant that put in risk the food we are packing inside. Then it's a good project that we are also participating in the Holy Grail, and we hope we can be part of the industrial test that is going to be done in France within the next month. Okay.
I'm certainly a strong advocate of digital watermarking, and very impressed by the way that the Holy Grail 2.0 project is progressing with those industrial trials. I know that CFlex is also a strong supporter.
Can I just say something
Yeah.
about Holy Grail? Because it's in danger of dying. You heard it from me. Because it's not getting the support from the brand owners and the retailers at creating the pull to put these things on their packs. We need all of them to put digital watermarks on their pack and to scale this technology tomorrow. The technology is proven. We can do it. There is an on-cost. It's not a huge on-cost in the big scheme of things, but because it would enable all of this, but it would enable a very different interaction with consumers for the packaging. And I think it's a huge opportunity for the converters out there to start marketing this opportunity. But it's a huge opportunity for the brand owners to get their mind around that every single pack out there has an invisible watermark that can talk to your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever, your mobile phone. And you can tell it at that opportunity what information you want it to tell. So yes, we need it to make these materials circular, but we need the brand owners and retailers to pull it or to push it as hard as possible, as fast as possible, because we're doing another round of trials, which is probably not necessary to show proof of principle, because it's already been proven. So anybody out there who's has the opportunity, please push this technology. We need it.
To add to this, this is an initiative which, what makes it different from the others, it's a cross-value chain project which has to be, and is partially already supported by everybody, from retailer to converter to recycler to sorter from system operator, etc. So that makes it kind of special or stand out from the others. I would have to add that if you refer to waste sorting and also recyclers, obviously we have already since decades, and we are continuing to do, also focusing on other technologies which are typical to that aspect of the business, or to which brand owners, converters, not so much relate, or they're not incorporated in that, is like technologies like NIR, AI, etc. So those developments, I have to stress out, are obviously also continuing and increasing, because we are in an ever-changing market. So within the recycling landscape, we continue to evolve according to the needs of what is being put on the market and what we have to deliver back to the market. So, but that's just to explain a little bit that difference. And the Holy Grail project is just a different dimension because it involves the whole chain.
Yeah. I'd like to stress out the importance of traceability, because if you know, say, what's in the package, which kind of possible additives or things are, you can control later more the quality of the recyclate, and this is also key to reintroducing in the system. So yeah, without this information, the quality will have to be compromised, and I think this is also a key parameter to consider for everyone.
Thank you. That's also this technology is also an enabler to get a far better yield, because you compared to bottles, the thermoforms are different size, different shapes. Before quality, it is making sure you capture it properly, and it brings another opportunity to capture more of this material so that it gets circular.
Yes, and the smart functionality has so many areas of added value beyond better sorting. So I think one of the challenges when we talk to our friends in the brand owners is to try to promote a kind of internal alignment within the brands, because I think there are lots of other departments apart from the sustainability managers who are going to have opportunities to realize if they all get behind it. Let's move on. We got into one very exciting area of technology, but let's zoom back out to the bigger picture. And we've talked about design for circularity, and one of the other pillars that we've talked about or alluded to earlier is the importance of the market pull and the creating demand for recycled content. I was really interested in Ben's presentation at the beginning, that he was talking about the shift from bottle to tray to tray. And Ida, I wonder if you could give us some insights into why KP sees this as an important objective.
Well, I think that with all the targets and everything that we see from all the consumer brands, and all the big players, we can see that the recycled content market, it's getting a bit more challenging. So we don't make bottles, right? We make trays, we make rigid fills. So if we really want to close the circular loop, we need to put back trace back to the product. So, that's really what it makes sense to do. That's the right thing to do. So that's why, we're pushing really hard, on tray to tray and making sure that we can close the circular loop on trays.
Mm-hmm. And Raphael, maybe taking a bigger picture in the PET world, where do you see the kind of key challenges and objectives for returning recycled content into new packaging?
I think one of the triggers I've seen over the last few years is just some companies having internal policy to reduce their GHG emissions. So that was a big trigger, because then one of the main trigger there is acting on the material. So if you don't put recycled content, you don't reduce your GHG emissions. So that's one of the first step I have seen from some brand owners who came at some time and said, I'm not coming to you for a price, I'm coming to you for a GHG emission reduction. And that was a complete change of mindset. The people I was talking to at the time were purchasing people, and suddenly it became the sustainability managers who were coming with the procurement people, and the procurement people were not anymore in the driving seat. So that came from a change there, from internal policies from brand owners that said, okay, I need to reduce my GHG emissions. And that came to an effective technical impact in plants, in demand towards recycled content, and regulation made also some changes on that because of recycled content, mandatory recycled content. But the first step I have seen in the history, overall, was first internal decisions to say, okay, we need to have an LCA, a better LCA, or whatever you call it.
If I may add something from this, I think that, this is really important what he said. So brand owners, really wanting this to having less carbon emissions in their products. And then this is like a bit of a cascading that it's happening, right? So they would come to us asking for products that they have less carbon emissions, but then ourselves, we go back to our suppliers and asking for products as well, that they have lower carbon emissions. So it's the whole cascading down that at the end, it's a whole value chain that really needs to work together, to achieve circularity or better sustainability performance, definitely.
Thank you. Anna, can you tell us a bit about the technical requirements and challenges that comes from incorporating PCR into new packaging?
Yeah, I think as I was explaining before, recycled material is not like virgin material, okay? Even though we are improving the quality of the recycled material in the last years, because I remember we started to use recycled material from bottles in around 2000, 2004, and the material was a disaster. I mean, it was very, very difficult to extrude that material and get a good quality tray. The quality of the material coming from bottles has increased a lot. But now the material coming from trays is different because, as I explained before, the viscosity is lower and we have a lot of other polymers mixed with the PET. And this is making the tray a little bit looking different. And this is something that the packers and the retailers and the brand owners in most cases don't understand at the beginning. They are starting to request the same quality that if the tray was a virgin product. And I always told them that when you buy recycled paper, you don't expect the paper to be white. Normally recycled paper is brown. Then in that case, we are exactly to go through this journey with our customers to educate them in the requirements. There are very basic requirements that are the functionality and keeping the food safe that we cannot deny and we cannot work against. But optics, and in some cases, fragility of the way they need to treat the trays is something that they need to start thinking on, because if not, we will never progress. I mean, recycled content is going to do a more probably hazy material, is going to do perhaps a little bit more brownish material, and at the end is a marketing tool. If you have a tray that is not so clear and transparent, is a demonstration that you are using a high amount of material coming from the recycling stream, and your carbon emission or your carbon footprint is lower. Then at the end, we have to play this. It's not going to be easy because the PET has been a fantastic material for food packaging, and we have been defending the clarity and defending the mechanical properties since the beginning, and the requirements are set at very high level. Now, recyclability requires a little bit of balance, mainly on the characteristics that are not important for the food safety, and it's something that we have to understand altogether.
I think the paper analogy is a good one. As consumers, we often look for paper that looks imperfect, don't we? Because it gives us that assurance that that it's greener.
If I add to that, so this is purely talking about, let's say, the technical parts. I'd like to make it often a bit more illustrative, a bit more tangible for people. So in the weekends when I'm at home with my kids, if I have a plate and I start to paint 4 different colors, after 15 minutes, my plate doesn't have the 4 colors. It's brown. So to visualize that, if you have all types of packagings in the market, all with a different type of color, you're not going to make anything clear from it. And anything clear is actually what's demanded from the market. So not to say that sometimes for functionality reasons, you would like to have a color. I can understand that. You might need, in some cases, a layer structure. Also understandable. But wherever possible, to make it more simplified, will ensure that you get more material back available as post-consumer recyclates. So, and this is why we value also the development to make, where possible, a simplified material, being clear, being maybe without a soaker pad, if possible, etc. And that will make, will create a situation where we have an easier access to a higher volume of a high-quality recyclate.
Mm-hmm. So perhaps that's the second message that we would send to brand owners and retailers at the moment, that playing a role in better communicating the benefits of recycled and the characteristics of recycled materials.
And big steps have been made. Huh? I mean, I recall like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, there are a lot of black trays on the market. That has significantly reduced. The amount of multi-layer is already reducing a lot. So you see a huge development. And also it goes for the bottle market, by the way. You see quite a few big brands moving away, in some cases from color to clear. So on a positive note, there are some significant developments on that side already since a few years. So I encourage that, and we're on the right track. I have to bring that positive message also.
Can I echo that? Because we look at the C-Flex converters and brand owners, and almost all of them have got an internal target to have all of their packaging, flexible packaging, recyclable by 2025. To the set of design guidelines which are out there, and if anybody's interested, there's not that much difference between C-Flex's D4ACE guidelines and Recyclers' DFR guidelines. In fact, if you put them together, you'd be hard-pressed to find a difference. So we see huge steps forward in terms of redesigning these packaging onto the market so that they can be recycled back to good quality materials. Which brings me to the other point that I wanted to make, is we need to get some clarity, we need to get some realization that the climate change challenge is our #1 challenge. Reducing plastic pollution is very important, but if I had to put it in a priority and I put climate change up here, it's way down there. If we don't get climate change right, we're screwed. I mean, the pollution's not going to be an issue. It'll sort itself out in good time because the plant will still be here. But and therefore, substituting plastics with other materials, which almost always has a higher environmental impact and footprint and carbon footprint, is not the right thing to do. So we do need to keep this in our mind. I mean, for PET, it's most of the applications, other than textiles, are food contact applications. Polyolefins, rigid and flexibles, they're used a lot in food packaging, but a huge quantity of them are used outside and in non-packaging applications. So going back to closing the loop, it's a very nice, emotive, simple message, tray to tray, bottle to bottle. But for a lot of materials out there, particularly polyolefins, that represents an unnecessary increase in the carbon footprint of that recyclate. So we should actually be looking back and saying, well, who else could use this stuff? Because we need to fill the demand for recycled content markets from the bottom up, and so we minimize the carbon footprint of these activities. At the end of the day, a big chunk of some of these polymers is going to have to go back tray to tray, bottle to bottle. But for a lot of them, there's huge opportunities out there who can use recycled content, mechanically recycled content. So it doesn't need to be chemically recycled with a higher carbon footprint. So we do need to get a hierarchy of how we tackle this problem and get it recognized by all actors in the market.
That's great.
I would say, to add something you said in the middle, we don't have to forget the functionality of the package. In the end, the goal is to prevent food waste.
Yes.
And this needs to be assured because actually the environmental impact of food waste is much worse than using one material or the other. So yeah, even when talking about the recycled content, there are some minimum specifications need to be assured.
I think this is where it touches again with developments on technology, for example, recycling technology. So how we see it is that mechanical recycling, it's well established, talking about PET here, Graham, is that...
Also for polyolefins, yeah?
Yeah, so for mechanical recycling, we are very well capable to do that, food contact recyclates. So where you still have to use either a color or a layer structure, this is then where in fairly near future chemical recycling should kick in as complementary, I have to say complementary to mechanical recycling. And so I wouldn't say this is like a free ticket to go back to very complex packaging or color or whatever, because it will have a different footprint and it will have a different cost. But for sure, the outlook should be that mechanical recycling will remain and we will take care of the clear and the mono packaging, whether bottle or tray, and the chemical recycling will, for a large part, also be able to add to this and ensure that also that packaging will return back into the loop.
I can add on this because we have been talking about design for recycling, and we always think on recycle for mechanical recycling. Now we have to start thinking in designing for chemical recycling too, because people think that chemical recycling is going to be a miracle, that we can put everything there, we are going to get a fantastic material like virgin without any problem. But this is not true. I mean, right now, designing for chemical recycling is different because when we are talking materials that are going to be to this stream, that multi-materials or colors or things like that, we need to start looking into the additives. We start looking into not mixing also polyolefins with PET because the chemical recycling is not going to do miracles. And is now... It's something that we have to start looking now for be prepared when this technology is ready to comply with the requirements of this technology in the near future. Because we know that some of the additives we use now, some of the colors we use now, cannot be used in chemical recycling either. It's something that we have to start looking at.
Yes.
Right now.
I've received a signal from the audience that we need to wrap up quite soon. But before we do, I promised, or perhaps threatened, that we would talk about the regulatory context, and I'd like to just briefly address this. First of all, in the context of what we've just been talking about, the need for PCR to come back into to packaging, thinking about PET in particular, how does the food contact regulatory landscape complicate or facilitate that task? Maybe Raphael could address that.
Yeah, the regulatory has been quite challenging over the last 2 years because of cannot remember a week where there wasn't something new or something adverse to what was said before. So our continuous request to the regulator is give us visibility, don't change your mind over weeks. So this is something we are trying to advocate, but that has been quite a challenge. It wasn't like this 5 years ago. I wasn't in these matters 5 years ago. Even 3 years ago, I wasn't there. But 3 years ago, when I was arriving, perhaps there was a modification or a new text every 2 months or 3 months. And last year was every week something new. So our members are continuously requiring, I guess yours also are continuously requiring, don't change your mind. Lately we heard on one side, please develop recycling capacities, put recycled content to make your packaging circular. And suddenly we see a regulation that says we will ban 50% of your market what is that? You ask me to recycle, and then you cut my source. So that's really the quite a big challenge. Then there are the regulations that address technical topics like 55% collection rate, 90% collection rate. So these are things that we can address technically. Then we have the answers. It takes time, but we have the answers, and then we can answer. But then it needs to be remaining into one single direction that is given to the industry. And yeah, that is our request to the regulators, is to stay on the line and do not change it permanently.
It's extremely difficult to choose a path when things are changing every week. That's the biggest challenge. And lack of harmonization, if every country is making their own legislation pass.
I think here what you see sometimes also is that there seem to be some contradictions here. On the one hand, we push for legislation that incentivizes reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. On the other hand, then what you see is a focus on plastics being bad. Whilst we know here as experts in the field that plastics are in a large amount of cases by far the best material to use in packaging from a greenhouse gas emission perspective. We have to say, however, we should, as a value chain, manage it carefully from design to collection to recycling and a reuse. And then it's by far the best option in a lot of cases. And what we now see is that we tend to create some barriers for that circular model. And I think here lies room for improvement and to create indeed, as Rafael said, a clear visibility strategy, which doesn't go all the way. And then I think as a total chain, we have a very, very good solution for all packagings. So I think here lies a very nice challenge with a lot of opportunities for all of us to grow the circularity.
So I think it's time that we give our audience an opportunity to put any questions that they may have to our expert panel. Would anyone like to? Their hand up. One here on the left-hand side.
You mentioned that plastic is the best packaging material. Fully agree. We have a series of problems. First is gas emission, global warming, plastics, and other problems. How can we explain to the people to close the loop? I see this circularity like an open loop. I miss the customers. What can we do? What can you recommend to close the loop and make it circular? Because I miss the customers, the consumers.
Here, one thing we didn't address, indeed, is a good point, is education. And the customer should know, and I know we as Indorama, we also have, and particularly we started this in Asia as an educational program to teach the people how to take care of their waste and make them aware that what you have is actually recyclable. Well, here in Europe, we are, I think, probably the most developed region in the world when it comes to awareness of what we have in our hands. And yet still here, it's very complex. To be honest, I don't even know all the time what to put in which bag or bin or whatever, because we make it very complex. So here we should educate ourselves as a consumer, but also the national, the European authorities and the people that create the EPR schemes to make it as easy, but also as clear as possible how to handle your waste and make it available for recycling. I think here education is a key, I think.
No, what we need is a digital barcode. but to push back on that, I think this industry has got to stop throwing the problem over the fence and blaming the consumers. We know we can get everything back. Everything is collected one way or the other. Very little gets littered into the environment. It just costs a lot more to collect, sort, and recycle it if it isn't coming back via a separately collected stream. If we want to do it, we just have to pay for it. And we all know how it gets paid for. It gets added onto the price of the pack. So the consumer's paying for it at the end of the day anyway. So I think we need to stop throwing this ball over the fence and just say everything gets collected, everything gets sorted, and everything gets recycled. CFlex has just done a compositional analysis with Petcore, with PSEP, with Styrenex, looking at how this stuff becomes waste. And even in our best case scenario, Germany, where we're sitting today, over 20% of the flexible packaging placed onto the market is in the grey bin, the residual stream. We are never going to go circular if we don't tackle that 20%. So we just need to put our money where our mouth is as a business, included in the cost of the packaging, and we can solve this tomorrow.
I'm sorry, I'm not blaming the customer. I'm not blaming the customer. I'm not blaming consumer. The question is, all the technical problems that we have been speaking here, we will solve it. I have no doubt. We will do it. The question is, we are also responsible to show to the people that we can collect everything and we can recycle everything. And this is what I mean, is that we are not doing a proper job.
Who's we?
The industry.
I believe that you're exactly right. The industry needs to start solving this problem by walking the talk.
I bring my wife here. You see here. Oh, please raise the hand, somebody which is not in the plastic industry. I think this is the answer.
Yeah, fully agree.
Any other questions from the audience? In that case, I'd like to maybe just, I think it's been a really enlightening panel. I think we need to have more of these discussions where we have people from different perspectives, sometimes exploring the small nuances and tensions between our positions so that we really understand. I think the pressure is coming to plastics. Regulatory pressure, consumer pressure. I was attending a paper event yesterday where brand owners sounded very enthusiastic about the advances that are taking place in paper innovation. So I would urge everyone here to continue to communicate and collaborate, as Graham picked out as key, possibly the most key dimensions of this, with everyone across the plastic packaging value chain to understand each other better and understand how we can align better around the necessary strategies. But I'd like to just end with maybe a kind of positive note and invite each of you speakers to give us in 30 seconds what would your key aspiration be to do what we're saying in the title of today's event, to try to accelerate the progress that we're making. So I'll start with Aida.
Yep. I think that probably, as I'm doing all sort of things related to reporting, I think that probably what I'll say, is that when you measure and you report things, you really know what's your progress, so you can keep driving that positive performance across. So, it's just really getting like all industries or all companies, to keep driving like the reporting on that. And then as well, the plastic packaging industry definitely, it's in a place where it can keep driving circular economy, and having all these transformative models that we just keep talking. So I think that, by all these like reporting frameworks that they keep just coming on, I think that, hopefully will keep driving the progress that we need to happen.
Thank you. I'm going to jump over to the other side to Graham now.
I have a question for the audience. When was the last time, other than at an event like this, that you heard anything positive in the press about packaging or from a politician? A very long time ago. I see lots of people thinking, I don't think I've ever heard anything positive about packaging. I think this industry needs to put aside its differences. We are one plastics industry. That's how the world sees us. We need to put our best foot forward and explain just how good we are at helping the world to achieve its climate change objectives. Without plastics, they're almost impossible to maintain the standard of living and do that. So, I mean, we need to really speak with one voice. We need to bring a positive message out there, and we need to do it quickly. So I think I'll just shut up there, because if we can do that, or even get half of that, it would be fantastic.
Thank you. Let's go to Willem next.
So whilst I fully agree, and I can add and confirm what you just said, for us as a company, as Indorama, what is our path forward, and how do we see the future is that, well, recycling will be growing, and we made as a company already a very big pledge back in 2019 to, in 2025, recycle 750 kiloton of material, of PET, which in 2019, that would consist of tripling, quadrupling our recycling capacity. We recently changed that, and actually our new target for 2030 is 1,500 kiloton of PET recycling in 2030 per year. And for that, we will collaborate with parties in the value chain, with industry organizations, with customers, with brand owners, to achieve that goal. Because we all can't do that by ourselves. We need to work together on design for recyclability, engage with EPR schemes, with the consumer, with the legislator, to unlock the potential which is in the market. And then we, as Indorama, we as an industry, will have the technical ability to provide these circular solutions for all, in our case, PET packaging.
Yeah. Sergio.
Yeah, I have an observation to make. I'm only 7 years working in this business, and I have to say how the picture has changed in a relatively short amount of time. So, yeah, accelerating. You just have to go walk around the fair. I think sustainability is already totally in motion, and seeing the change in the last 7 years that I could observe, I have no doubt that in 7 years we'll be talking about very, very different things. And yeah, of course, the missing link that was mentioned, there are still things, hurdles to approach. But I have no doubt that they will be overcome with technical data and making logic decisions. Everything will be possible.
Rafael.
Two things for me. I call again in our platform for recycling, for evaluation, for the development of design guidelines and promoting the circularity of thermoforms. This platform has been lacking from the beginning of the presence of brand owners. And finally, we get one, finally, and I hope to get more. So that's like a breathing exercise. There's been a lot of efforts from all the other parts of the value chain in that platform, and now we start to see the brand owners joining us. I hope this shows a journey in front of us. So that's for us to emphasize that within the platform. That's for us and the brand owners to join us. Also, that this kind of event wasn't happening over the last few years. So again, I join you in saying we see these coming stronger and bigger, and I will make some advertisement for Petco, because we have an event similar to that one in Bologna next month, so in the 14th and 15th of June. So where we will again try and share all of this, more like in the workshop format instead of a panel format, but we will again push that. So that shows the trend which is ongoing in the direction of thermoform circularity.
Thank you. And we'll give the last word to Anna.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to do a kind of recap. I mean, PET is a fantastic material, has been the material of choice for food packaging for many, many years, because the mechanical properties, the optical properties, the barrier properties we have. And right now we are just a challenge in front of us that is comply with the legislation and closing the loop. I mean, circularity is the only way to do that. First, because it's going to demonstrate that the PET trays are fully recyclable, is the only way. And second, because right now with the actual legislation, we are going to have a big competition against the bottle market. And then circularity is the only way to protect the value of our raw material and also keep this material for us and demonstrate that we are just closing the loop, that we are a fully recyclable solution that protects the food. That at the end is the most important thing. And for me, is this the conclusion of this type of discussion. And also, I will just invite the packers and the retailers that are in the room to play their role in this game, because at the end we miss them in these discussions. If they don't pull for having recycled content and for having recycled content from trays, at the end they are going to have a big problem in 5-10 years when the PET tray is not going to be considered recyclable. Then we need to embark them into these discussions, embark them in understanding the constraints and the challenges we are facing, and fully open to collaborate and to bring them into the discussions in PetCore or in other events as the one that Rafael has mentioned the next month in Bologna. Please join us.
Thank you. Well, thanks very much to our fine panelists, Graham, Rafael, Willem, Anna, Sergio, and Aida. And thank you. And thank you to our audience today for engaging. And you're very welcome now to stay and network and mingle and maybe ask some more nuggety questions to our panelists. Thank you, everyone.